Hello YouTube, welcome back to L-Space, or welcome to L-Space if you're new. My name is Tristan, and I would love to wish you a very happy Pride! I have my Pride Totoro shirt on, because we're gay and nerdy in this house. We love Studio Ghibli. Today I am going to be doing my June TBR. Now, ever since I became a reader, again, I guess rediscovered reading as a hobby, I have dedicated the month of June to reading queer fiction, and more specifically, I think I tend to prioritize gay fiction over anything else, and that is solely because that's who I am, and so I want to celebrate that and also engage with other people like me, basically. I read pretty diversely in most respects. I just recently read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and that is a beautiful, beautiful queer story that follows many different versions of queerness, and so don't think that I am by any means ignoring those. It's just not what I tend to prioritize in the month of June. For myself, these are the books that I'm interested in reading in June. I'm going to go through kind of a pile of possibilities, as Book Chat with Pat very nicely introduced me to the idea of. And so basically what I'm going to do is give you just all of the books that I'm interested in reading in June. There is no way, in any way, that I will get to all of them. I will probably get to about half. Also, if you noticed, I did my May wrap-up video, filming them back-to-back. Same shirt, different video, but same day. So anyway, so I'm going to be going through basically high priority versus, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say low priority, but just like not as high of priority. So that's that on that. So let's get into the books. So the first one is going to be The Guncle Abroad, and this is high priority solely for the fact that it is due in like 5 days at the library, and I am a third of the way through and very much enjoying it. This is the sequel to The Guncle by Stephen Rowley, and that one is a really beautiful book processing grief and a family coming together after a tragedy. And this one is family coming together sort of in the advent of what could be considered a tragedy to some. Basically, the kids, the cast returns. So we have Grant, Maisie, and Patrick O'Hara, and they are traveling around Europe, processing the fact that their father is going to remarry somebody that they don't necessarily like. And so the Guncle, Patrick, is going to be trying to help them grapple with that, and so far I very much enjoyed it. Stephen Rowley is a really great writer. I love the way he writes characters. I love the way he writes dialogue. I think that it's very campy, it's very fun, and overall I think that this is a pretty good follow-up so far to the Guncle. I love some of the meta things in this one, where Patrick is also an actor, and he's seeing scripts for some of his projects, and he's like, you do not give me sequels. I will never do a sequel. How dare people interrupt and undo the happy ending of the first one to just tear that open and put people through more struggles. And then, of course, you know, the fact that this is a sequel is quite funny. So anyway, loved that. And that is The Guncle. I will be finishing it very soon because I have to give it back to the library. I can't renew this loan. So yeah, that's that on that. Next is Blackouts by Justin Torres, and this is the most recent winner of the National Book Award in the United States. As you can see, I have also started this one. It's high priority because I want to finish it, and it's also something that I am very interested in. Justin Torres teaches at UCLA, and I'm interested in going to UCLA. So I'm very much wanting to engage with his work and see what this is all about. This is basically an unraveling of lost queer history, and I am very excited to continue reading it. It's basically a dialogue between an unnamed narrator and another man that he's known, who's sort of on his deathbed and has been trying to put together the lost histories of, or the lost work of Jan Gay, who's a real life scientist, or psychologist, social scientist, etc., who is trying to study queer people, sexual variants, basically. So yeah, I have so far really enjoyed it. It's a really interesting multimedia experimental book that I've liked thus far. I will maybe have to reread it from the beginning, but maybe not. I remember it quite well, and so I think I'll be able to pick up where I left off. But anyway, so high priority because I just want to finish it, and Pride Month is a really good excuse for reading this one. And the writing is quite interesting too. It's quite bleak, and I bleak, but in like a good way. All right, next is Arrete, avec tes mensonges by Philippe Besson, and this is the original French for the book Lie With Me, which is a fantastic title. The way that they rendered that, brilliant. And this I have been wanting to read for a long time. I know that people really, really love this book. I'm kind of wanting to go into it pretty blind, so I'm not really going to read the synopsis or anything like that. I know that I have read the synopsis a long time ago, and I've heard people describe it on BookTube, but I am not going to look into it any further. But Philippe Besson is a really, really good French queer author. I do have another one of his books in this pile that's in the sort of like, I guess, lower priority. But this is a high priority solely because I've heard so much about it, and I am very excited to read it in the original French because that is what I do. Okay, cool. I guess for those that don't know, my master's is in French, and I'm big into French literature, and I'm obviously very into queer literature. So here we are, French queer literature, go. So that is for you English speakers, Lie With Me by Philippe Besson, and Arrete, avec tes mensonges by Philippe Besson, de Philippe Besson, for you French speakers. Very excited to get to this one. So every Pride Month, every June, since I sort of rebranded myself as a reader, I've been reading one of the Tales of the City books by Armistead Maupin. This is the 7th book in the series, but I've also read them in not Pride Month, I will say. This series holds a very special place for me because it is not only a fascinating series from a like literary history, a history of literature perspective, as well as like a queer history perspective, but it is just a delightful, fun, pretty campy series of people. It's very soap opera-y. It's kind of like Friends, but set in San Francisco and pretty gay. And then there tends to be sort of like a thriller-esque drama that happens in some of them that tend to get pretty weird, tend to get pretty far-fetched in a lot of ways, but they're just fun. And this is, like I said, the 7th in the book, and it's, from what I can tell, centers Michael Tolliver, or Mouse, and I am very excited to read this one. I would actually love to finish the series this year. I don't know if I will. But that would be kind of bittersweet because that also means that I would no longer be reading them during Pride Month. But also reading one a year is kind of just not like enough for me, because these are the way that there's a lot of really touching moments in this series, and I'm a big fan. So anyway, that is Michael Tolliver Lives by Armistead Maupin, Book 7 in Tales of the City. The first one, of course, is Tales of the City. Definitely check it out. So the last fiction book that is in my high priority pile is Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart, and I know that this is a very harrowing story about a queer boy named Mungo. It's written in dialect. It's written in Scottish dialect, so I know that this is going to be maybe a little difficult to get into initially, but I've heard nothing but good things, as well as nothing but tragic and traumatizing things, but I'm still nonetheless very excited to get into it. I've had this on my shelf for a couple years now. I picked this up at a thrift shop. I got pretty lucky with the hardcover. It's like, I think I got it for maybe like $7, but it was on my TBR last June, but last June ended up being pretty dedicated to like AIDS literature. AIDS literature among a few other things, but this was on my TBR last June, but I just never got around to it, and so this June I'm definitely going to prioritize it more than anything. I know that this is going to be one that I might have to take my time with because it is pretty heavy in its content, but nonetheless I am very interested and excited to finally get to it because, again, heard nothing but good things. Okay, so high priority, again, this is the last of those. This is a nonfiction book. This is It Was Vulgar and It Was Beautiful, How AIDS Activists Use Art to Fight a Pandemic by Jack Lowry. And for those who have followed my channel for a little while, I am very big on the way art can be used as a way to resist oppression, protest, way to form community, and, you know, just like everything that art is supposed to do. And so my partner got this for me from City Light Bookshop in San Francisco when he was on vacation there a couple years ago. And again, this has been on my like TBR, my list of books that I've wanted to read. But it has just always sort of fallen by the wayside. As you can tell, like I said, I wanted to read a lot of AIDS related books, and I did. I read A Quilt for David, which is a really, really moving poetry collection about sort of like the patient zero of AIDS. Definitely give that a look. Look that up. It's fascinating. I also read Borrowed Time by Paul Monette, and then I read My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson. So those were the books that I read last Pride for the AIDS literature stuff, and this was obviously on that list. Also, one of the Tales of the City ones deals with the AIDS. Several of them actually deal with the AIDS crisis, because some of them were written during the AIDS crisis, which is part of the reason why it's such a fascinating series. But anyway, nonfiction. I want to read nonfiction about how art was used to fight a pandemic. So that is what I'm going to be reading for my nonfiction this month. I don't always read a nonfiction, but I'm definitely prioritizing this because this is right up my alley. My partner did a really good job of selecting this for me. So anyway, that is going to be one that I'm very interested to get into, and I will be, I can tell, underlining the heck out of it. Okay, so those are my high priority books. Now let's go to the also high priority, but not as high priority as the original stack. One of them is going to be E.M. Forster's Selected Stories. Now, these tend to be a little bit more queer-coded. The actual queer narrative is pretty understated. However, E.M. Forster was quite gay. His life was fascinating. I read his biography this year by Wendy Moffat, and it's called A Great Unrecorded History, and it is just a fascinating look at a man who kind of lived in the queer subculture throughout the entire 20th century, and I could not recommend that biography more, especially because it's very well written. Like, it is engaging, it reads like fiction, and highly recommend that one. But I am reading, probably, some of his short stories, and I'm reading it on the sole basis that he is a queer author, and he is one of my favorite British authors and one of my favorite English language authors that I've loved his work in the past. So that is one that I will be reading somewhat soon, and I've talked about this before, I think in a book haul, but just like that cover is so cool. I love it. It's fascinating. Anyway, so that is the selected stories. Next, another queer author, another classic British queer author is Christopher Isherwood. This is A Single Man, and I've started this one loosely. So same with my kitten. She's definitely taken a bit of a nibble out of the corner there. But anyway, this is a very interesting book so far. I've started it. I'm on, like, what page am I on? I'm on page 6. And the way that it opens is like nothing I've ever read before. I'm going into this pretty blind, I will say that right off, so I'm not going to read the synopsis to you. I don't know for sure if this is a queer story. It's definitely queer coded so far. But Christopher Isherwood was a good friend to E.M. Forster. He was responsible for making sure that Forster's explicitly queer story, Morris, reached publication, and so I have wanted to get into his actual literature. And when I found this, I think it was like on a remainders pile, and I got it for $7, and so I was like, of course I'm gonna get it. And again, the writing thus far of what I've read is quite good, and I'm excited to finish it. If I do, I think that this would be a pretty easy one to do because it's quite short, and those 6 pages I read maybe in like 10 minutes, so it's gonna go by quick. So like I mentioned, I'm also going to be reading another one of the books by Philippe Besson, and this is L'arrière-saison. And this, again, I'm gonna go into kind of blind, but I can tell. I guess this isn't really the synopsis, but I can try to translate on the spot as best I can. So I want to speak about people who love themselves, who find themselves by chance in a deserted cafe one Sunday when the summer is on its way out. About an awkward man who previously had made bad choices, of an abandoned woman who swore that who would no longer suffer, a resurging past of happiness that is maybe no more than a memory, and of hope that is reborn, because it is infatigable hope, because that can redistribute the cards of the deck. So yeah, that's my very quick translation of what's written on the back here, and it sounds quite interesting. It says a melancholic beauty and a sonata of autumn, and I think this will be a pretty interesting book, especially to read at the very beginning of summer, especially when it's like as summer is leaving. So yeah, that is L'arrière-saison by Philippe Besson, and I'm very excited to get to this one if I can. All of his books are pretty short, but I think his writing is quite poetic, and it might take a little bit more time to kind of get into, so we'll see. Oh man, I'm really setting myself up for a lot of books and probably a lot of disappointment for not getting to all of them. Alright, so next is A Country for Dying by Abdellah Taia, translated by Emma Ramadan, and this is originally written in French. This was a book that I received from a friend of mine who is moving out of the country, and he asked me if I wanted any of his books, and I said, yeah, give me all of your existentialism and gay books. And so he gave me he gave me basically from here over plus this one of gay books. And this one follows, so this takes place in Paris in the summer of 2010. Zahira is Moroccan, a prostitute in love with a man who no longer loves her. Zahira's friend Zanuba, formerly Aziz, prepares for gender confirmation surgery and reflects on recurring trauma of loss, including the loss of her pre-transition male persona. And, you know, to be honest, that's kind of all I need to know that I'm really going to enjoy this. I can tell that this is going to be a pretty difficult read, content-wise, but I'm very excited to read it. And look at that. Here I am reading not gay men literature, gay male literature. So cool. See, I can do it. But yeah, this sounds very interesting, and definitely a piece of French literature and French queer literature that I am very new to. So I'm excited to hopefully get to this one. We'll see. I may prioritize this one over some of the other ones now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, if I get to this one, great. It's short, but it's short and the type is quite big, so I don't know. Maybe I can get to it. I'll do my best. Last, and certainly not least, is a mammoth of a book, and that is Hours by Philip B. Williams. As you can see, it is large. It's almost 600 pages. Maybe it's more than 600 pages. And this is about a woman named Saint who is a conjure woman and uses her powers to take down plantations. And it also goes through kind of the entire 20th century and follows multiple different characters throughout time. And the magical realism aspect of it is quite interesting to me. It won a Lambda Award, so I know that there's a queer element to this, though I do not know specifically what that element is. I just know that it exists because that's what the Lambda Award is. So yeah, I am very interested in this book. From the moment that I saw it on the shelf, I was like, that looks cool, especially because I had never heard anything about it. But when I read the description and then like the first couple pages of it, I was immediately like, yeah, I have to have this book. So now I do, and I think that one of the things that sort of gets swallowed up in Pride Month is the fact that Juneteenth happens in June, and so if I can maybe at least start this around Juneteenth, I think that that would be a proper way for somebody like myself to celebrate that holiday. So I will probably try to get to this one. I will not try to finish it in June, but I will try to get to it in June, because I do have a lot of books that are really tugging at me to read them, and so I will at least start this one around Juneteenth and definitely read it on Juneteenth as a way to celebrate the holiday. I'm so excited to read this one. And I follow the author on Instagram, and just everything that is coming out of his page is just so interesting. Okay, so yeah, those are all of the books that I am hoping to read. I guess, you know, the possible reads for June. Last sort of, I guess, reading adventure is one that I've been doing from time to time, ever since I bought the book, and that is the collected poems of Wystan Auden. And he's a British poet who lived during the 20th century. He was also a good friend of E.M. Forster, and I've been very interested. He's interesting fact. He was a good friend of Ian Forster and also a really good friend of J.R.R. Tolkien. So, this is a pretty interesting literary figure. I know that the letters between Tolkien and Auden are, like, incredible. I need to find a copy of that book, a copy of those letters, like a bind-up of all of them, so that I can read them. But anyway, Auden is another queer poet. This is his collected works, and there's plays, there's poems, and a whole bunch of stuff in here. But he writes a lot of very interesting things, from political commentary to anti-war poems to poems about love, time, death, mortality, aging, and just like his scope is so broad that, you know, you can kind of flip to any point in this gigantic tome of his poetry and find something that's very interesting to read, and something that's very different from, say, what you would find on, like, just the page preceding it, or the page succeeding it. But I will see if I can find one of the poems, because he wrote, so far my favorites from here is a section called 12 Songs, and some of those are pretty explicitly queer, pretty explicitly gay, and I very much liked them, all 12 of them. The other thing to know is that during the, sorry, I'm not looking at you while I am looking through this, but one thing to know is during World War II, he married the lesbian daughter of Thomas Mann, I believe her name is Erica, who's a German, and he married her to, like, green card marry, so that he could help her evacuate from getting captured by the Nazis. And that is just a very interesting thing. Christopher Isherwood also did some of like, he didn't marry anybody, but he was sort of like, he prided himself on being sort of the pimp of the person to find gay men to marry women at risk of being captured by the Nazis, so that they could then evacuate them out and have them immigrate to Britain. So that is a very fascinating piece of history that I would love to delve into and, like, write stories of that, of my own. I think that would be really cool, because it's something that I had no idea it happened, and I think that highlights ways in which the gays of that time period really did help save people. You know, maybe not in the large numbers that were necessary, but, you know, it's a way that that is a piece of our history that does not get told enough. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking and just look for the freaking... Alright, so if you will permit me, I would love to read one of the poems that I am particularly fond of. So this is If I Could Tell You by W.H. Auden. And I'm gonna go turn off the AC. Okay, so this is one of my favorite poems from this collection, and one of my favorite poems of his, and probably one of my favorite poems of all time. So this is If I Could Tell You. Time will say nothing, but I told you so. Time only knows the price we have to pay. If I could tell you, I would let you know. If we should weep when clowns put on their show, if we should stumble when musicians play, time will say nothing, but I told you so. There are no fortunes to be told, although, because I love you more than I can say. If I could tell you, I would let you know. The winds must come from somewhere when they blow. There must be reasons why the leaves decay. Time will say nothing, but I told you so. Perhaps the roses really want to grow. The vision seriously intends to stay. If I could tell you, I would let you know. Suppose the lions all get up and go, and all the brooks and soldiers run away. Will time say nothing, but I told you so? If I could tell you, I would let you know. and it's just so good. So that's a pretty good taste of what his poetry has to offer. There's another little bit called Marginalia toward the end, which is fascinating. Of course, you do have to get past the fact that he was a wealthy British white man writing in the 20th century, so there's a little bit of racism that you can expect to find, and if you can get past that, as just sort of, you know, a product of the time and his circumstances, the rest of what he has to say is really quite remarkable. Not that the racist stuff is inexcusable, it's just what you have to expect from that time period and that his background. So anyway, that is, those are all of the books. That's a lot. I know there's absolutely no way that I'm going to get to all of them. I definitely love to get to most of them if possible, but I will be kind of giving my thoughts throughout the month of the books that I'm reading and kind of my progress on each one. I imagine that I'll finish the Guncle Abroad pretty soon, but until then, let me know which of these books either you have read or would like to read. If there's anything that you think I should prioritize more instead, definitely let me know. What are you reading in June? Are you celebrating Pride Month? Do you have any sort of books that you are prioritizing for Pride and highlighting to celebrate those sorts of things? I know that a few people that I have interacted with are on the queer spectrum as such as, like myself, and so I'd love to hear what you're reading. But yeah, definitely let me know what's going on for you. Doesn't have to be queer books if you want to talk about what you're reading in June, but definitely let me know. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another video. Take care and happy Pride. Bye.